Welcome to Recapping with Cam. Today I am very excited. I've got a good friend on the show. What sort of intro do you want?
That was good enough.
You reckon?
I'm happy with just good friend. Although, why did your voice change, Cam? Is it because the mic's gone on? All of a sudden you've changed who you are? You're this different person?
Well,
I'm joking. I'm joking. He's not. No, he's exactly the same. In fact, I bring up that story because, look at me overtake your podcast. I bring up that story because remember when we used to work at a certain ZM radio station. And I always remember the first time I was ever invited to go in on air with Pauline Gillespie and Grant Kittyama. Polly and Grant at the time they were known as the ZM Morning Crew. And the first word I said on the radio, Polly looked over and she goes, "Go ahead and stop you there. Why did you change your voice?" I was like, "I have no idea what you mean." And it was live on air and it was so humiliating. And she was right. I'd put on a radio voice.
Verbal headlock instantly.
Yeah, totally. and that moment I froze and I was just like, oh, like mum telling you when you're in front of your friends, don't show off in front of your friends. Like absolutely stalling life. And I'll be honest, I tried to just do that to you then, Cam, but you just rolled with the punch and you were fine because you knew I was being all shit. Anyways, as you were, sorry, your podcast.
In a roundabout way, you did give yourself an intro. So Marc and I used to work together on a morning radio show, and that's a while back, but I feel like that's not the reason why I'm keen to have a conversation with you, have you on my new show. I feel like we've got a friendship that has kind of stayed no matter how many years have passed. There's always a dynamic that I feel really comfortable chatting and talking about, probably things that most men would be like, ooh, emotional. So I want to
totally. Yeah, I mean, and the uniqueness of this is I feel like we come from complete different walks of life. Like who you are and what you're into and what gets you excited, Cam, I can honestly say does not get me excited at all. And if anything, like I just look at you and go, fuck, you're weird, oi. But the friendship continues to flourish. It's strong. And I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. It's been one that we've had for years and years and years. And you're the same as me. Like we will just sit there and talk for hours and not get anywhere, but feel like after we've talked, I always feel like my soul has been rinsed. I can go on with life and continue the way I am.
Yeah, man. And with that in mind, I'm interested just to hear what feels new for you. Like, I guess the last time we had a proper catch up was like a few years ago. I remember we were outside your workplace and I was like, oh, I'm about to go have a sleepover at my ex's house. And your colleague at the time was like, oh yeah, she's crazy. Do you remember that? You were having a smoke.
I do not remember that. Where? What was it, in Auckland or Wellington?
That was in Auckland, yeah.
Who was my workmate? And I would have been having a cigarette. That was definitely, you know what, smoking's still cool, kids. No, I've stopped smoking cigarettes. But what, so are you asking me what's new since then? Because that's obviously a shitload's happened, Cam. And we, other than the odd messenger saying, hey, bros, you're all good. And we usually don't have time to be doing too much more than, yeah, mate, trucking on.
Yeah, man.
Are you saying what's new in my life or what's new in the world?
I know what's new in the world, but let's focus on like the very recent few months for yourself. What's changed? What's been the biggest challenge?
Cam, I feel like you're asking me to absolutely undress and let you know how COVID has punched me in the nuts on several different ways, and I'm happy enough to do it. Look, okay. I moved up from Wellington. I left Wellington. I left the whole radio pop music scene to get into sports broadcasting because it was always my passion and always something I wanted to do. And I loved American sports, right? So I always looked at New Zealand sport and thought, man, fuck, we are lame. We're so shit at sport. Like, it's just so boring. It's the same shit over and over again. Let's hire some ex-All Blacks who can't talk particularly well, and they will talk about rugby, and we will sit and watch it and coach it. And it was just so like, So I was thinking, man, imagine if the stuff that I, take on what I love doing, which is producing and making stuff exciting and making it, more than what it should be, and turning sport into that. So that was always my dream. So I gave up my job in Wellington, brought my family up. I've got 2 stepsons, my own daughter and my wife. And begrudgingly, they came with me. Like, my wife is one of those people who, and you've met Jana on a few occasions, where she's just like, fuck, you're an idiot. Like, nothing good goes well good for you. Like, you're just bad luck. Like, why do you even try? Like, she's one of those people, like, love her to death.
Yeah.
And I need someone like that in my life, or else I'd be away with the theories, and I would have I would not have any type of focus. She very much pulls me, roots me to the ground, and tells you, come on, lock it up, you shit, make something happen. And I know there's always that saying, sorry, I'm going to divert a bit here. There's always that saying, like, you surround yourself with uplifting people and you will reach the clouds, all that kind of stuff where you're positive people. But I'm a dog, Cam. I'm an animal. I'm a grown-ass dog. Like, I've had females in my life that are supportive and loving and allow me to do whatever it is though I want to do. And you know what I want to do, Cam, that I learned in those years? I want to have sex with multiple other partners, and I want to cheat on that girlfriend, and I want to this. You know, this is the first relationship I've ever had with a woman that makes me go, oh, don't want to do that. I might lose her. And I've never had that feeling before.
Wow.
So that's why when I say, she'll say to me, you fuck all, da, 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 it does keep me on the straight and narrow. And I do want to prove to her that I am not that person. Like, don't get me wrong. I'll turn into a dog again if I become a multi-millionaire and everything succeeds in my life. I'll be an absolute dog. Like, woo, see what happened? That's kind of the fear. However, I go off on a different tangent there. Back to here. So I move up to Auckland, bring the family with, begrudgingly, as I said, move my two stepsons away from their father, who's Wellington based. So I'm not exactly in the good books with anyone or in my life at that time, but I was determined I was going to work on radio sport. And I was going to take something that was forged in the late 80s and I was going to change it into something that was worth listening to. Like, I'm talking pop sports culture, like not just talking about rugby. I'm talking about the collecting cards, the NBA cards. I'm talking about, you know, betting. I'm talking about all the things that make sport, fantasy sports, everything that makes sport actually interesting, not trying to squeeze blood out of a stone with a game.
You were at the first step of your personal odyssey. That sounds like you had all this weight, but you were like, I'm going to do it anyway. It sounds like that's kind of the mindset before the move, because that is a big move. That's a move that doesn't affect you. It affects you and everyone in your close bubble. So if you shift me through the next step, so you make the decision, you pull the pin to do that, is it a different scenario when you get there, or is it exactly as you expect?
I like that. I don't know why you made up the word Odyssey and put it in there, but I'll take it. No, there is a time, Camp. Odyssey. No, well, it's nothing like I imagine. But now that I think about it, of course it was that way. I imagined that I was going to be given the freedom to stamp my flair on what would be, and people would go, oh, I get it. Sweet. That's how it should be done. Sweet. And there would be an evolution within the radio station and the mindset of the bosses and then those who were listening. Instead, it was almost a nightmare. Like, you move into that and you've got people are used to listening to that sort of radio station and that sports station, and they're set in that mindset, and they actually quite enjoy shitty radio that is just talking rugby, and like that's what they're used to. Who's this yobbo coming in here trying to spruce it up and playing music over highlight clips and making my life a little more jazzy and rocky? You know what I mean? Like they were used to their old, and here was me bowling in there going, oh man, this is shit. Let's move it up. Let's kick it up a notch and turn radio sport into something that was good.
Were you that open about, like, let's change the direction straight away? Or at first were you like, oh, no, I'll just keep quiet? Did you go straight in with that kind of attitude?
No. I went straight in. I didn't give a fuck. I mean, you know how voracious, I don't know if that's not even a word, but I'm going to use it. You know how voracious Pauline Gillespie was. Like, she had a vision. It was get the fuck out of my way. Like, and that's something that one of the many things I respected about her and learning from her is follow me in this direction. If it's the wrong direction, I'll be the first person to stab myself in the heart and fall over and die. But God damn it, it's a direction. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think if you really strongly believe in something, that's definitely something you should do, no matter what and who you offend. Like, I didn't go into the role or think to myself, right, I'm going to go in there and piss everybody off. That was never my plan. My idea was, I'm going to go in there and make this the type of radio station that I listen to. And I'm a mega sports fan. But I appreciate the production value that goes into things. And I appreciate that you need storylines and several storylines to hook people into watching a game of sport. It's not just, let's preview this game. let's wrap this game. It's, here's why you need to be watching this game tonight, Cam. Did you know that this person here, he just lost his grandfather, and his grandfather was the originator of this team. And the last thing he said when he dies is, you must win this rugby game. Like those type of storylines that people can relate to, and you find them and you hook the promo around them, and that's where the discussion goes. That's what creates the magicness of sports. And sports is entertainment. Sports is no different to music or a band, and knowing why they play that kind of music and the storyline behind it. And then, you know what I mean? Like you get into it, you're like, oh man, I remember it with Korn, like growing up listening to Korn. And I think Jonathan Davis, the lead singer, and he had been tormented as a younger boy, molested and had issues with his dad, and all his music would reflect that. And it was almost a purge valve for him. And it made the music, listening to that music, so much more interesting, knowing the backstory and knowing why it's not just thudding bass and someone screaming into a mic. There's a real story behind it. And when you know that story and you feel like you're a part of that story, and I wasn't molested when I was younger, but God, man, listening to him and the pain and whatever it's coming through his music, same with sports. And it just takes a bit of effort and a bit of time, and not just going to the same old, same old. And my idea and thought pattern when going into the job, and don't get me wrong, I was literally just the sports producer at on the breakfast show. So I was going in there, and this was a breakfast show that had very little direction. They were kind of like, oh, we're just doing this. And I was like, nah, man, let's do this. Let's do this, and this. And came in there with that energy and put it all out there. And the amount of people who complained, who were just like, who's this egg? And anytime you mentioned your family, we don't want to care about your family. Like they were vicious. They were vicious. They were vicious old men who were not, they're not ready to feel anything, if that makes sense. Sport is their escapism. Do not make me feel anything. And by goodness, if you do, I'll be mean back to you. Like, I'll be mean at you if you make me feel something. And that was the crowd who we were broadcasting to. And so that, to me, that was a mind-boggling thing. I was like, fuck, really? This is going to take more than what I thought it was. Here's me thinking a couple of tunes, a couple of great highlight clips. I'm away winning.
Yeah, because when you described the importance of the backstory and the importance of the people involved, to me that sounds like, yep, of course. Like that's how people gain an interest in anything, is connecting to the personalities. How long did it take? Because how many years were you there in the end?
5 years. And it was 5 years of hard toil and 3 different lineups on air. And I'm what you'd call, and you knew what it was like, Cam, a hybrid producer. So you have producers in radio who tend to are all behind the scenes, answering phones, setting up interviews, doing all this. A hybrid on-air producer will be someone who actually is the third wheel in the party. So they're actually talking, and they're also doing all the other jobs. But I got myself into a place where I had the sound of what I was liking with radio sport. I would choose the music beds. I would choose the intros. Every intro to every hour would have a highlight clip or something in it that was relatable or brought up a memory. So I remember when we were at ZM and we'd do high school hits, and that would always bring up that cool feeling in your head, the back of your head, where you're like, oh man, I remembered that song. Yeah, that was when that first thing happened, or blah blah blah. And they would use these high school hits to I guess, you know, keep people listening. Yeah, the high school hit equivalent of sport is a highlight clip, a great highlight clip of New Zealand sport that's happened and takes you back to a place. So I would start every hour off with a real, like either a new tune or a tune that would get you up and running, because we're going up against these music breakfasts who have got plenty of energy and they've got music behind them, and they talk for 3 minutes and then pump up another song. So we're going up against that. So we need to hit our hour with a good track, a real good couple of memories, and maybe something out of the you know, a bit of commentary from a try that was scored in the weekend that was significant, that everyone's like, oh wow, cool. And then we get into what we called our first interview, which the whole process was wrong. Anyway, I feel like I'm going on way too long about this radio sport thing, because it's dead in the water. Like they pulled pin on that.
And that brings us up to current day. It sounds like it was a slog. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it was disheartening almost from the beginning, but you pushed and tried to power through that so that you could inject your creativity.
I had no choice. Like, if I'm being honest, Cam, I had no choice. Was I to go home and look my loving wife in the eye and my kids, who I'd moved out of their schools and moved up to Auckland, and sit there and go, you know, the person who you look at as a superhero, your dad, yeah, he's fucked up. This is really not going the way he planned. And he's really, really sorry. And I know I made us sell our house down and I've lost any chance of working again at whatever radio stations down in Wellington. But can we up and out of here? Like I literally had no choice. And when you're faced with that, I think you become quite resourceful. And not resourceful with excuses, but I believed that I could change radio sport. I truly believed that I single-handedly could change radio sport and they make it into something that everyone listened to. So whether you like sport or not, you enjoyed the people who were talking. They didn't just talk about sport. They talked about all the stuff that was going on in the world, but with a sports undertow. So like a sports pop culture undertow. So if you're talking about the elections, maybe you're doing who's the starting bench for, Labour Party and what best positions would they play in sport, but and just all these there's so many different ways of approaching it, and just being creative and not lazy, you could get everybody. It's not a niche station, in my opinion. It could have been everything and anything, and it could have been a monster like The Rock is, for instance, or one of those big sort of male skewed stations. That's where I believed radio sport should have been. But you said earlier, I was banging my head against the wall, and there were several times where I went above my bosses and went to the CEO and said, man, if you want to make this thing sing, which is never good. I mean, you can be the squeaky wheel, but I do know at the end of it, Cam, that when they decided and they have everyone on a conference Zoom call and we're like, just letting everybody know that we've decided to cut radio sport indefinitely out of the picture. It's done. None of you guys will have jobs. And because we're not intending to bring it back, none of you are capable of getting the government subsidy. So we're going to give you a time to write some suggestions on email. And, at that stage, they're like, write a suggestion. You know that that's not happening. And that was basically it. They pulled the pin. And at that stage, I'd also, as I was saying, diversifying and keeping myself hungry. I'd been doing an ANZ sports scene show for the New Zealand Herald, and they'd pulled pin on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also emceeing for the Warriors and doing a couple of emceeing events for sports games. I was the dancing monkey at halftime and before games, but no sport was being played. So within a 2-week period, everything I had managed to do, and I was earning good money. Once you added them all together, I was working like a dog, but I was earning good money, and that all was just taken out from underneath me. And I sat there and I literally sat in this very room with all this sports memorabilia and stupid gear. And I sat there and thought to myself, wow, it's one thing to look your family in the face and say, Daddy's fucked up by moving up to Auckland because he doesn't enjoy his job at Radio Sport. It's a whole nother kettle of fish when that job no longer exists, and neither does anything else that he's worked for the last 5 years to try and have a part of it. Like my income went from really good to zero in like a day, with a mortgage, with a family to feed, and thank goodness my wife's still working. Like it's not everything. Everything's bad for me. It's just what happened to me is, when you are docking the lambs when you're younger, put the old ring on the lamb. Yeah. And then there was the chance to also dock their nuts. It was like they put the rubber ring on my nuts in that moment and took it off, and the nuts just fell off at that moment. I was just like, I have no income. Everything I've worked for, sport's not even playing, and I'm at ground zero financially.
Yeah, I hear that, and I'm like, there's no silver lining, and there's nothing that anyone who would have been around you or that I can even say right now to balance that out. That it sounds like one of the most horrible things that anyone could go through, and I feel for you that you went through it. How did you get through that, bro? Like I think if anyone who listens there, they're like, how's this guy still okay? Like,
no, Cam, but look, a lot of my past. Like, this isn't shit. Like, this to me isn't shit. Like, I have been through shit. When you were born to a mother that doesn't love you, and you're bandied about half the East Coast, and you're the trouble child, and you're pushed through, and eventually getting adopted at 3.5 years old to some parents, like the things that I feel like I've been through and where I've come from, like shit changes. Do you know what I mean? Like in 5 years, I'd managed to establish really good connections and done really, really well for myself. And I actually thought it was tough enough, but now it's all been taken. So what's next? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the next thing? They can't take anything else. They
Yeah.
literally cannot take anything else when it comes to financially or work. There's nothing else COVID can rip from me. Nothing. So that's where you start. And
Mm.
so, like, I mean, unless somehow COVID takes my credit card, debit card, and the balance out of that, which is still zero, and I go negative. I mean, there's nowhere else I can go, Cam. I'm at rock bottom financially as it is. So, cool. This is what rock bottom feels like. Let's start moving up. It's the only attitude I have.
Yeah, right.
I didn't do anything shit. Like it's not like I stole something and then lost my job and now I have to work my way back. COVID-19 took radio sport out of play and my other earnings out of play, and I've got to adapt. I'm one of those people who are like, cool, so I can no longer eat fish. Sweet, I don't eat fish. I'll move on to another meat, and I guess that's how it is for me. I'm like, well, it is what it is. I've got to adapt and move on and create my own lane, I guess is the easiest way of putting it. And that's kind of where I focused all my energies into.
Yeah, bro. Oh man, it's such a heavy period that you've gone through. I feel like anything that I say, even about my own life, it's going to feel like I'm
No, but it's not. Like, I honestly, it sounds heavy, but it's not. It's not like, it's not. My family's still all safe and alive and well. I'm still in a house. You know, I haven't become addicted to a drug that's taken me to a place that I can't get out. Like, it's this real shit, real dark shit. I've sat down, and you know me, I'm an overthinker. So I have sat down and overthought my situation on many occasions, and it's hurt. It has hurt. Like, I've been upset and angry, and I probably haven't been the greatest of fathers all the time. There's been times where, I probably should have got the kids off their beds instead of looking at their phones or playing PlayStation and taken them for a run or gone and played in the park with them. But I've just felt so low on energy and gone, I actually can't be fucked. I'm sorry, I'm going to sit this one out. So there are times where I know that I haven't been the best of what I could be, but I understand too that it's important to make sure that you are looking after yourself. And if you're looking after yourself means taking a knee on this, being a great dad and taking the kids to a park today, then by all means, I think it's best you do take a knee and be a better person the next day, if that makes sense. So like I say, I'm not looking for sympathy. I actually don't care if whatever makes you, I don't even know what that saying is, something, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I believe in that. Facing adversity happens over and over and over again. And you've just got to keep going forward, no matter how much adversity gets thrown at you. If you don't, well, you don't live a life. Don't be here. Don't take on the cool things that come from the low parts.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Well, it's commendable. I think it's a lot of people wouldn't do things or bounce back the way that you've bounced back.
Well, have I bounced back though? I mean, I'm still a long way away from bouncing back. But yeah, I've started doing my own stuff. I guess that's where we get to. I looked at some of the connections I'd made through radio sport. One of them was Eden Park, the stadium, National Sports Stadium here in Auckland, and decided, why don't I take what the gamers and technology and vloggers have and put my passion into sport and make that into a weekly vlogcast, and also use my Facebook platform to push out sporting content that's kind of produced a little differently. We're having fun with sport. It's fun with sport. It's the shit that I would talk about at the barbecue with other dudes who like sport, and just present it that way. And went to the guys at Playtech who set up all the gamers with all their gears, and they were like, cool, we like it. So we're kind of more into the gaming side of things, but we can see how a mainstream sport kind of feel pushed through the platforms that we use in a gaming sense would work, and it also introduce a whole new audience to what we sell, which is this kind of gear, and it is what it is. And then went to Eden Park, and they said, cool, we want to be a part of this. Eden Park, once the sports game's finished on a Saturday and everyone moves out, this thing just becomes a big dead sort of space. By all means, why wouldn't we put you in one of the boxes and you put some branding and imaging up, and all your vlogcasts come out of Eden Park, gives it that sports feel, gives it that kind of thing. So people who I know were pretty forward thinking, and people who were keen to work with me came on board, and now it's just a matter of keeping on, creating content and getting out there and having as many people enjoy the stuff that we all enjoy.
Does it
do it in the way we enjoy doing it?
Doing your own vlog, does it feel different than radio right now when you're doing it? Do you feel a different mindset or a different feeling when you're doing it?
Yes. Yeah, it feels more honest. It feels way more honest. And let me bore you again, Cam, and you know this story already, but for anyone who may still be listening after this tragic beginning and shitty story I've told them, I loved radio because it was theatre of the mind. I always thought it was such a interesting medium. Like, I always thought TV, movies, all that kind of shit was quite lazy. Like, you can kind of just sit in front of a TV and be like, you know, and blob out and half watch and half take the senses in. And I was fascinated by when I was at drama school and studying, I think it's Antonin Artaud, I think is the writer, and he created the thing called the Theatre of Dreams. No, Theatre of Dreams is Manchester United's home ground. Theatre of Cruelty or something like that. And his concept was, Cameron, you'll love this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can explain this to you, but his concept was he used to create theatre shows, right? And the crowd would come in, and you know, in a theatre show, the senses that you have available of the audience is sight, what they see on the stage, and sound, what they hear. He's like, fuck that noise. I want to take over all their senses. I want to absolutely destroy them. So he would burn carcasses in the background, so the smell of burning meat would come through the whole theatre, and people were like, you know, and the fear. He would go into research about things that people don't like smelling when they're sort of a bit scared. So he would pump that through the system. So he was trying to, and water or something, he was something else, touch. So he was, you know, let's involve touch, let's involve smell, let's involve all the senses, and absolutely crush these motherfuckers who are paid to come and see my show. And I love that. Do you know what I mean? I love that. But the idea of radio is for me was the ultimate, because you had to use your words, you had to use your sound, and you had to create the picture for them. There's no such thing as listening to a good voice break and someone explains something into a story that you're really into without them sort of going, oh, I'm talking over here, and not like a TV show or a movie that's over there. Like, you do it really well, radio, you will stop people down and they will create their own picture and draw in their own mind. And I thought that was really, really powerful. And that's what I loved about radio.
It sounds like that love hasn't changed. Like, from what I know now about what the last maybe 5 or 6 years has been, part of me would expect that you'd be like a little bit, your passion for it might decrease, but it sounds like you still feel as passionate about it even after a kind of a painful experience. Like, you've been able to look at it and go, that's not radio that's like that. That's just the experience I had in the last few years.
Totally. Yeah, that's it. And I mean, you've got to, right? You've got to know yourself well enough to know whether it's a circumstance, whether you've been a victim of a circumstance, or the, you know, it's not. It was never radio's fault that happened. It was just a whole heap of shit that all kind of burnt up at once. But Antonin Artaud, I think his name was. I need to find that out. I need to read more on his theatres, because apparently it was like people didn't like it.
Yeah, bro. And at the time, like, even now, if somebody was burning things and spraying chemicals through a theater, people would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But like, it's, by the sounds of it, he was the first. So it's like people hadn't even considered that you could spray chemicals or have burning carcass smell go through the theater. So yeah, you wouldn't be expecting it, is what I'm thinking. It wouldn't have just had the impact of, oh, there's a scent. It's like, do we have to get out of this building? Is this the end?
But think about this. What type of man has that thought? Like, there are thousands and thousands of years worth of theatre, right? On stage. You've got William Shakespeare. Like, look at me trying to name them so I sound like I'm arty and know my shit. Hey, William Shakespeare.
You got one.
I got one. No, but you know what I mean? It has been a tradition for so long. Yeah. And then Antonin Artaud turns up and he's like, fuck that noise. I don't want people rolling into my shit, eating their popcorn and stuff. I'm going to fuck them. They're going to pay money to get into my stage. I'm going to throw shit in their faces. I'm going to get them wet. I'm going to suffocate them. Like, what an asshole.
That's-
What an asshole. Like, people have the choice to go to this, and they can either enjoy it. Of course, they can look at their phone if they want to. It's their prerogative. They've brought your ticket. Shut up and put on a good enough show. No, he is taking all your senses.
He's going to leave
he
you
is
with
dominating.
stains on your clothes. He sounds like the Johnny Knoxville of the 1700s, like the first dude that was really like, hey, I get it. I get the format, but I've got some changes. I've got some things that I really want to leave people feeling a bit yuck. I don't want them to feel entertained.
To be fair, Johnny Knoxville would do it to himself to get these people feeling a bit.
True.
Like, Toe is, oh, you're going to walk into this there today? All right, then. Let's see you take some of this and light that cow on fire. That's right. You smell that shit? Like, he's the personality behind someone like that, where I'm going to change the way that this has always been done. Argumentally, is not too dissimilar to the way that I rolled into radio sport and thought, I'm going to change shit up. I mean, it is, but it's not. I mean, that, you know what I mean? What type of person thinks they are going to go and roll? Yeah. Who's going to, what type of person rolls in and thinks, I know what's the future. I know what's new. I know what people are going to like. And again, I go back to Pauline Gillespie 101. It doesn't fucking matter. So long as you've got something that you're wanting to happen in life, something you believe in and grasp in, and you're strong enough to just go for it, go for it.
Yeah, man. Honestly, everything, and not to turn it into a gushing about poly session, but everything that I think back on about like where I get the way that I approach creative projects could be put down to the things that I learned in that time while doing the show with you, her and Grant. Like, I remember one of the first things she said was, it was after I got a bunch of negative feedback. We used to have like a thing on the computer where text messages could be read out. And I think I'd done something weird. Like, I'd gone out and like interviewed people about their bra sizes or something. And then on air, she like reads out all these responses that are like, Cam's such a weirdo, blah, blah, blah. And then when the song was playing, the mic wasn't on anymore. And she like pressed the button and she was like, it's okay to be polarizing. It's better if some people hate you and some people love you than if people just forget you. And I was like, oh, okay. So those negative things, that's good. Like, creating some kind of reaction with people is better than being neutral. And so, yeah, I think that a lot of the things that I learned from you, her and Grant have stayed with me for everything that I approach with music, with comedy, with podcasting. So for me, I don't know how that period is for you, but I kind of cherish it personally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's unless it really hurt you in life, I think that's what you should take every month. You know, you've got to cherish these things and take those learnings and involve them in your everyday life heading forward, or just when you need them. And I mean, it's not like you always need to be polarizing, Cam, but you know, when you are polarizing, you've always got that little thread of, you know, advice that you can relate to. And she's right. And notoriously, radio people, it's funny, and you know this, Cam, but people who are listening may not. And it's the idea that it's that wallpaper listening, right? Those sort of 10 a.m. in the morning jocks through till the drive show, they're all wallpaper listening. So they don't want you to be polarizing. They want you to play their 10 songs in a row. They want you to update the weather. They want you to update. You will float through life and do that for 30 years and you'll perish somewhere. And you'll make enough money to make yourself happy, but you'll perish somewhere. And there are people who are those way inclined, and that's cool. I was never that way inclined, and I never will be. I'd like to hope. Like, I always want to make a difference in whatever I'm doing. And for me, it's sport. And I know that's my passion, and I know that that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I could never be a wallpaper listener and a wallpaper content maker. And I feel like that was always your intent too, is that you're just not wired that way. If you're going to do something, you want to make it affect people, right?
Exactly.
So they're going to like it. They're going to be weirded out by it. They're going to love it. And that feeling of knowing that whatever it is you've created, you've garnered some type of feeling in somebody else. It's a powerful feeling to know that that little idea that you had, that little seed you planted and how you pulled it off, and then someone else absorbed it through the ears, through the eyes, and went, or like that feeling is like, it's good.
Bro, yeah, sometimes, yeah. Because I think the assumption, because I've made comedy videos and short films and little skit videos and stuff, and I think the assumption sometimes from even other people that I've made these things with is you're wanting to make people laugh and that's it. But the reality is for things, especially that are not scripted, where it's me just talking to other people, I feel like the zone that I get into is like you're in a big old abandoned building and there's like locked doors, and the further down the like hallway you get, the darker it gets. I know that just by walking down those hallways and trying some of those doors and walking in there, me and whoever I'm with is going to feel something. And I don't know if it's going to be a laugh. I don't know if it's going to be a fright or if it's going to be like one of the noises you made earlier, like a, oh, and honestly, I'm happy with any. Like for me, I just feel like I'm exploring when I'm having a conversation with somebody or when I'm when the camera's running or there's a mic on, and it sounds like, as I'm like listening to what I'm saying, it sounds like I'm trying to be all artistic or whatever, but for me, it's just fun. For me, exploring somebody's point of view and somebody's experience in someone's life, and like, it's entertaining to me to explore avenues that might not normally get explored in conversation.
I wonder what that is about your personality type though, Cam, and where that has come from. Like, I do wonder, because how many kids in your family?
6 of us.
And you're the oldest.
Yeah.
Because this will tie back to something. This personality trait comes from something or that has either happened to you or is bred into you, or is like this sort of mischievous, take me by the hand, let's walk down this corridor and poke in little holes. That comes from somewhere, and I do wonder where that does come from, Cam. Like it's you're the oldest. You've got a certain responsibility to not be poking around and sort of leading the way, not into a dark corridor. You're more supposed to, do you know what I mean? You're supposed to take your siblings by the hand and lead the way to light.
On the path, well traveled, I'd say. Like the usual job, I reckon, traditionally of the eldest is to be like, this path is well traveled and it's traditional, and this is the way you should go. But I don't think I think I walk.
Like it's. Yeah, and it's a lame rebellion. Like you're not Reno Reigns. Like you're not cool with what you're doing. Like you're doing it in the lamest way. It's not like it's not like you're not a badass, Cam, but you're just doing it in a pesky kind of way. You know, like I've decided I'm not going to be this oldest child.
I've decided to be a bad eldest sibling. That's my mark on the world.
But you're not bad. That's the thing. Like, it's not like you're a badass. It's not like you know what, fuck you, I'm joining the gang. You're doing it in kind of like a pesky off to the side kind of way. Like,
yeah, it's more of a slight annoyance.
Totally. It's, yeah. You know, if you read your report, and you know how we always got the school reports after every year when you're at high school, if you read your recent like report,
yeah,
it'd still kind of err on that same kind of thing that you would have got through school. Like Cam, like he really doesn't apply himself, and I'm sure this is his like rebellion kicking in, where he's just decided not to walk the well-walking path. He just wants to just be a little pesky and just poke at doors that, you know.
It's not enough for us to tell him off. It's not enough for us to take him to the principal. It's just enough for us to be like,
he's not going to get arrested for it as an adult. He's not going to get arrested for it. People will look kind of oddly at him, but you know, it's not enough. It's not enough to send him to jail.
Yeah, bro. That's my adult report card. What would your adult report card say, do you reckon?
You know what? I've had a complete spin around. I would say that my problem at school was he just doesn't apply himself to anything. He's like, he just cruises and never applies himself. I would say if you looked at my adult card, what is it called? What do we call it?
Report card.
Yeah, report card. I would say that he has certainly found the thing that it is that he applies himself to. And I know I've still got those problems where once I get into something, I'm so into it that I forget about everything else. And that's something where, you know, I don't compartmentalize things very well and put them on shelves and then come back to complete the task. If I've got a task to do, I've got to get it done and get out of my way until it's done. Because once it's done, then I can move on to the next one. That's something that's become more and more apparent in my adult life. And I would say that would feature quite strongly. Like, Mark's a nice enough guy, but don't get in his way when he's trying to get that task done, because he becomes very determined. And that would be the opposite to say what I was at school, where I was like, I'll do it sometime, that task, it'll get done. Well, I'm not that passionate about it anyway.
Mm.
And that would probably be it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you remember the conversation? And probably not, so it's okay to say nah, but I remember when you lived in Newtown, it was like a 2-story house. I came over once, ate boiled mini potatoes, but I ate them so fast that they got lodged in my throat. But around that time, we were having a conversation about how your mind has a bonnet like the front of a car, and you can, like, up to a certain age, I think we were theorizing it was like 30, you can make tweaks in the bonnet and you can change quite drastically your mindset and your beliefs on things. And the reason we were having the conversation is because I was honestly weighing up doing a season of rugby. Like, I was going to do rugby union for a season. I was like, I just feel like I've been in this bubble, this kind of like softer side of not even masculinity, softer side of being a dude. And I remember trying to like talk about how I wanted to like see if I could have major shifts to my mindset and the engine of my brain.
Totally.
And I remember you saying, bro, I can feel the bonnet closing for good. And I was like, what do you mean? And you're like, I honestly reckon like a year, 2 years from now, I think the bonnet's going to be down, and I don't think you'll be able to make major shifts in the wiring or like the piping. I think that in a couple of years, that's going to be me, and I'm going to be locked down. And it made so much sense. Do you feel like that happened, or do you feel like you still have access to lift up the hood and make major changes?
I do remember the conversation. I remember us having a cigarette on that little bench chair out the front where we were having it as well. And it's a fascinating concept to think of. And I actually still believe it happens. There is a certain age where men shut down, and forget about what what we were talking about with the bonnet. It's just genuine acceptance and learning and wanting to be, I guess, upgraded in the way they think. And there's so much of that that's evident now in American politics, especially, and the sporting world. And sorry to bring it back to sports, Cam, but it's easily the language I can speak most freely. So when you think about athletes and being outspoken about racism and taking a knee during the national anthem and making a stand for something that they believe in, with police brutality and all these things, whether they affect you or not personally, it's very, very interesting, because sports, I love the sports stars. So when they take a knee, I'm on their side. I want to know what their story is. If I was put in a situation where someone I didn't like was taking a knee and had to take it on board and go in and research why they were doing it and actually try and understand their point of view, it becomes quite labor intensive. And I think men get to a stage where they can no longer put the effort in on something they're not that into. They're just like, fuck it. And they just leave it, and they don't like it, and they become grumpy old men. And that's what I still believe. You get to a point, but I don't think it's an age thing, Cam. I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's a fighting thing. I think men fight for many, what would you call it? Men fight to stay men. And then eventually they're fighting at work, they're fighting at home, and then they just kind of close up shop and give up. and it's just this is what I am. And you just become the grumpy old get off my front lawn man. And it just moves that way. I think what we were talking about was that young adulthood, that person that when you get to say between 30 and 40, there's a stage in your life where you're having kids. And you do get to change the wiring in their bonnet and be who you want to be. You could have fucked up majorly in your 20s, but now you know that you've got to set a role. And I'm talking in a general sense. I'm not talking about the people who have kids and still remain being maggots and don't look after their kids and don't take their duties seriously. I'm talking about what happened with me at 27, 28 years old, where I was free flowing. I was engaged. I had a house. I had a motorbike. I had dreadlocks. I had a beard. I was a nasty motherfucker, Cam. Like, I was, you know what I mean? Like, I was cruising. This was my direction. And then I met my wife, who would be my wife, and she had 2 boys already. And I sold my motorbike, and I bought a purple Toyota Corolla. and I brought, with the leftover money, a couple of bunk beds so that her boys could stay at our house. And that was a change in me. That was me under the hood, rewiring where I was headed. And then, you know, in my 40s, as I get, what am I, 38 now, 39, as I head towards my 40s, I'm surrounded by people and friends who are getting to that age as well. And the minds are starting to stop with the uploads and making sure that they're over things that the kids are into, the TikToks, where the line in society is acceptable. Now, it's not actually acceptable to wolf whistle at the girls when they're walking past anymore. And then so you're not allowed to wolf whistle anymore, Cam. And here's the line here. And you've got a whole lot of 40-year-old men who have said, fuck it, don't upgrade my system. Right. I'm happy where it is. You guys are a bunch of fucks. Bring back the old days. And then you get the other 40-year-old men who are still keen to stay with it. Mm-hmm. And they sit there and go, you know what? Okay, if that's not cool, then sweet. I'm moving with the line. Yep. I'm moving with the line because society's line will forever change. And I think that's where I'm at now. I've done the underhood stuff. I feel like I had to, because if I hadn't, I'd be drinking. I'd still have a motorbike. I wouldn't have my family that I have now. There's no way my wife would have stood for it. Yep. But you do that stuff under the bonnet, and you can continue to do that all your life. You don't want to, though, because once you've had kids, Cam, you need to be pretty consistent. They need to see the same man walking out. You can't be the dude who walks out with purple hair. You can't be the one morning and goes, slalom-a-flow. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's a new word I've made up, slalom-a-flow. And expect your kids to...
on your scooter as you're doing it.
That's right. Totally. Do you know what I mean? So you do have a certain consistency that you lock in. So you do close up that bonnet.
Yeah.
You do close up that bonnet, and you hope that the wiring you put in there is something that you can stay true to yourself, because you don't want to change who you are as a person, but you do need to sit down that, make sure that motor is running, because you're about to have a whole lot of little wee eyes looking at you and asking for food and needing your support when they go through hard times and stuff. And so you got to have that bonnet pretty well sorted. And then, like I say, get to 38, 39, 40, and all your friends start stopping the uploads and their brains are stuck here. And they're like, fuck that noise. I'm a grown man. I don't need to respect women, or I don't need to not say that word just because it wasn't acceptable then. What means you make, now you're doing that. What is it called? What do they call it, Cam? They're calling it, oh, it's going to come to me. It's cancel culture.
Yep.
Cancel culture? No, it's not. It's just upgrading. Some of that shit isn't acceptable anymore.
It never has been. Yeah.
It never, yeah. And now that it's been pulled past the line of what's acceptable, fucking sorry, it's not that bad. Pull down some statues, burn some shit down and say that was wrong. We used to glorify that. We shouldn't have. We've pulled down all the pictures of Hitler, haven't we? You remember the pictures of Hitler that were in everybody's houses in Germany? They're all gone. They're not glorified anymore. We realized that wasn't the thing to be doing at the time, and so on. So I feel like I've really, one other thing I learned from Pauline Gillespie was politics just doesn't wash, and don't say anything about the Germans and Hitler.
Well, I'm glad that lesson sunk in enough that it popped into your brain after you covered the topic. What do you reckon our job is when we have a good friend who maybe is telling themselves, I don't need to upgrade. I think cancel culture is a joke. I can say what I want, blah, blah, blah. Is it our job as their mates to try and help them upgrade, or do you just kind of distance yourself quietly? What's your job?
I don't know. I definitely mention it to them. If they're a good mate, I'll say to them, fuck, man, you're sounding like, and the greatest one is get off my lawn. Easy on you. No, because when you're at this age, you don't want to be at this age, right? You're starting to grow titties. Life is just not as great as it used to be. You don't have the energy you had before. It's just, life's not great. So the last thing you need is a mate of yours saying, okay, old man, yelling, get off my front lawn, like, get off the grass. Having that said to you is a real alarm bell, and you go, okay, here's another example of me getting really old.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to not be old? Oh, I need to accept that this is where the line is now. Okay, got it. But it's the dudes who push back against the line. That's what annoys me. You can disagree with whether you think the line has moved in society and you can no longer say this certain thing or be this certain way or wear these types of shorts. Fuck, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's the ones that seriously push back, and not only seriously push back, but look over at you and go, What are you trying to be? You're trying to be hip. Are you trying to, you're like, no, dude, like, we don't run society, believe it or not. 40-year-old men do not run society. We don't set the trends. We have our beliefs and we like certain things, but we are not the barometers of
Mm,
what is right and what is wrong. It's
yeah.
the younger generations now. We've passed that baton on gracefully, and we've said, we've taught you all that we know and as best well as we could, and now we'll follow your lead. That's the most humble way you do it. And if you need us to lift up the heavy stuff, we're right here to do it. But we aren't setting the trends, Cam. If bullying is no longer allowed, then bullying is no longer allowed. No matter how much fun we had when we were bullying as kids,
Yep.
it's just not allowed anymore. Never mind the guy who comes and goes, fuck that, bullying hardens people up. It teaches kids adversity. They need to be bullied to get to where man, then they're going to leave school and they're soft. No, they'll find a new way of finding adversity.
Yep.
Bullying is shit. That's where we're at. Move on.
Yeah, bro. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to ask me whatever you want to know about my life as it is now.
Cam, since we last caught up,
Yep.
have you made love to a girl that has frizzy hair and you've tried to stroke your hands through the hair again?
Not since. Not since I last saw you.
Good. Okay.
It wasn't frizzy. It was braided. Oh no, you're right. It was out of braids and frizzy. Yes. Okay.
Right.
Oh man, you got a good memory.
No, trust me, that's the only story I remember. It was such a good story. Like, I remember you going and you're demonstrating how you were used to putting your fingers through the hair of a young, lovely lady when you were making love.
Because I'd only made love to one person.
Yeah. And the hair was a straight, and it was almost, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It was almost a little light hair. Like the hair was light and your fingers would go through them, well conditioned, and you were used to that.
Yep.
And then you got an experience where you made love to someone whose hair was no longer, it wasn't straight, it was frizzy. And you tried to run your hair through it. And I remember it was like Velcro, but you still proceeded to like pull through the hair as if like
what sex was. I was on autopilot.
You thought that's what happened, and you ended up pulling like half the weave out. No, I added that bit off. But I remember that story and thought to myself, that is so hilarious.
Yeah, right.
And now I'm just thinking about it. I'm gonna have to give myself a gun. So where are you at, Cam? How much more work you got to do underneath the bonnet? Or are you happy with where things are at in your age?
I feel like I made some of the more drastic under the bonnet work happen in the last few years. I think that I probably expected to close the bonnet like late 20s, 30s. In my mind, it was an age thing. I thought like you do all your growing up in your 20s. I had like a couple of major breakups in my mid 20s. And in my brain, I was like, okay, that's the pain that you go through. Like there was pain in childhood as well. But in my brain, I was like, yeah, that's all the pain. And now I've just got to like learn how I want to adapt because of that pain and grow out of it. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened in the last few years. One of my good mates passed away. In the lead up to that period, I was partying really hard and like partying had become my life. But in the last few years, I've been sober as a result of prioritizing my emotional development and the grief that I felt from losing that friend. So the place that I'm in now is a place of trying to look after myself, look after my mental well-being, and make my emotional development and my self-care the number one priority. I think that where I was in my late 20s after a couple of breakups, I was like, all right, let's party, came to Melbourne, partied, and then went through some pain when that friend passed away. And I feel like that kind of became a really pivotal moment for me where I had to evaluate what was important to me. And in that process, I realized creative pursuits are really important to me. Podcasting, writing music, hanging out with friends, but in a more quiet setting. I've become passionate about working, being a good worker. I was a little slack when you and I worked together, but yeah, I've been doing it with a clarity and a sobriety now for the last few years. So for me, unexpectedly, the last few years became a period where I had to look deeper under the bonnet than I definitely ever expected to. Kind of just had to go, all right. It was like a crossroads where I was like, I can either keep partying and not have to experience the emotions that I know are pretty massive, or I can quit partying and feel those emotions more painfully, more powerfully than I would if I could just mask them a little bit. And then out of that, I've felt stronger and I've felt lighter, not in a way where I'm like, oh, so that bad experience, that's a good thing because it helped me. Not that at all. It's just that experience made me evaluate what I was doing and what direction I wanted to be heading. And I feel like now I am heading in a good direction. And for a little while, I wasn't.
What was the moment? What was the, people have their moment where they're like, fuck, something's got to give, something's got to change. What happened? What was your changing moment?
Yeah. I think it was in.
And you better not have done this on any other podcast, Cam. You better have only gone to this level with me.
It's an exclusive, don't worry.
Good. You know me, I'm selfish about your love.
I think that it was it was probably 2 or 3 months after my good friend passed away. And I realized that for that 2 or 3 months, rather than just binge drinking on weekends, I'd been often drinking or like almost every night. And a lot of days and nights were just gone memory wise. Like I was trying to reflect. I think I wasn't too drunk in this moment. I was drinking at the time that I had this moment, trying to reflect on the 3 months because it felt like they'd been a blur. Like I was like, man, that just flew by. And I was trying to like think about what had just happened and I couldn't because the memories were gone. And so I just remember thinking, I know that I could stay on this path, on this exact direction and be having this exact moment at like 45 and be trying to like, can I remember 6 months ago? I knew that that was the path and the direction that I was on. And I knew that I could make a decision to switch it. And I knew that for myself, it wasn't, just tone it down a bit. I knew that I had to cut the drinking out entirely because it was.
Was it hard?
Yeah.
Like you hear about people giving up stuff. When I say giving up, I mean quitting stuff. And they always say drinking's like just tough stuff. Like proper, the giving up the drink is where real demons are faced.
Yeah, man. It was brutal. Yeah, it was, I'd say drinking and smoking. Drinking was harder because it was tied to socializing. If I was talking about just the chemical breakup, like the inside of my body screaming out for it, then smoking was harder.
Right.
Yeah. But drinking was harder because it changed everything about what I was doing with my time. And like suddenly I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go along to that thing. I feel uncomfortable about that. And it's like I didn't realize I had social anxiety for maybe like 10 or more years because I had never had to feel it because I just had booze to not have to face it. And so, yeah, it was tough. And it still is tough. There's still events where it's like, the Christmas party's coming up and we're going away for 2 days and it's going to be huge. And then you just have
we're going to get shit hammered and you're like,
yes.
See, it's weird because smoking for me was that way inclined. Sorry to make this about me, Cam, and we will get back to, because I've still got another minute and a half worth of getting back to how you're going. But I remember giving up smoking or stopping smoking, as they say, and I never ever felt like I would ever have a fun time in my life again because smoking was so tied up to having good times.
Yep.
And I remember going through that giving up smoking thing 100 times while I was a heavy smoker. And I was a pack a day, Marlboro Reds, get it in me. Light up those heaters, get them in my mouth. And just that drag, that filthy burn down the throat was just such a blissful feeling. It's like, and the smell as it just emulated and you, powered it back out into someone's face as they were walking past on the street, like, have some of this. You know what? I just remember it. Smoking had been around me and was such a big part of my life and such a big part of the fun times that knowing that I would stop, I would never, ever find that joy again. And then I took up vaping, which is still horrendous, I'm sure, and will come down to being 3 times worse than actual smoking. However, I stopped smoking 5 years ago, cold turkey, using vape.
Yeah.
And my chest infections, I would get at least 6 or 7 chest infections every single year with bronchitis when I was smoking. I haven't had a chest infection for 5 years.
Yeah, man.
Changing to vape. And I never, ever want to have a cigarette again. People offer you a cigarette and you're like, oh, fuck no, they taste disgusting.
Yeah, man.
Why have a cigarette when you have vape? But there was a distinct time in my brain where I said to myself, and you know how much I love playing with my brain, Cam. I sat there and said, this shit's going to be different, big fella. You're used to that hot, burning, smoke down in your chest. Well, shit's going to be different for the next couple of weeks. It's going to feel like a heavy sort of mist that goes in there. And it's going to taste different. It's going to feel different. But this is the new you.
A little wet.
In 2 weeks, a wet feeling. Yeah. You vape, you know that difference. That's a different feeling in the chest. And a lot of smokers will just go, well, start vaping then. Well, that's not good enough. It doesn't give me the hit. And they go straight back to that dry smoke going in. But once you get your brain around the idea that you're changing it up, it's going to be wet smoke, wet vape, steam coming in. That's where your nicotine's going to come from. Before you know it, you're no longer having a cigarette and you don't want a cigarette and you still have fun times and you don't have that haunting feeling that you'll turn up to the party and you just want to have a drink or you just want to have a smoke. Mm-hmm. There was that replacement of something that wasn't as dangerous as the studies suggest, but I got away from smoking by not having the feeling like I'm never going to have a fun time again. Ever. Worst life ever. Kind of feeling like a disgruntled child. Do you see my dog in the background?
Yeah.
He's been snoring. That's what all the noises are in the background.
What's his name?
Priest.
Oh, it is Priest.
Yeah.
I was
still
nervous.
alive.
That's what I was nervous of. I was going to be like, Priest, and then you'd be like, actually, bro.
He shouldn't be alive. Like, he's so old.
Yeah.
He's just a grumpy, fat Chihuahua cross with a Jack Russell that's just... Should I love him, though? Priest, you right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
sound like a duck.
He's just he's me to a T. If I was to come back as an animal, I just want to be something that's pesky and annoying and small and not respected and just an asshole. You know what I mean? Just
carried around.
Carried around. Well, I don't carry him around. He has to make his own way around. He doesn't get the treatment of the other dogs that are his size. Like, he's a mouthful to a normal dog.
Yeah.
Like, a normal dog would just kill him, like, gone.
Have you ever been bitten by a big dog?
No. He goes at big dogs. He goes at them. Like, he'd be like, at them, and they're like, oh, shit, that's not how this works. And he usually intimidates them. He's never run into a dog that's actually gone back at him. And to be fair, I've always been quite selective of allowing him to interact with certain dogs, knowing that I think he's found a way in my heart where I'm like, I actually don't want to be without him.
Mm.
So as I was claiming that I've succeeded through losing all my anything financially through COVID, if COVID took my dog, I tell you what, I'd be finding it pretty tough for a couple of weeks to stay on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, bro.
It would be the final straw.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to have a chat on my loosely labeled, vaguely themed podcast, Recapping with Cam. Do you want to leave me or anyone who's listening with some final thoughts?
I want to know why you're sitting there right now listening to this. And I want to know if you took anything from it. Cam and I have always had this relationship where we do dissect the way we think. And we like to explore it and take it in different directions and be suggestive. And I think that's one of the great qualities in our friendship is that Cam, to me, seems to come from a completely different angle. And that fascinates me. And I would like to think that me and Cam's life comes from a completely different angle. And that must fascinate him. And together we walk down the dark corridor and we poke through doors and we have a look and we actually laugh and giggle and we're completely honest and straight up. I could honestly say I'm more honest with Cam than I am with my wife. I wouldn't tell her half the shit that I talk to Cam about. And it's because we like going to those places and exploring them. We've done some weird shit together in the radio sense, and we've discovered and gone through some weird places. And I don't know, Cam, what your relationships are like with other friends. I've never taken the time to think, I wonder if Cam has these sort of conversations or goes on ventures with other people down those dark corridors and has a poke and has a look. And I've never minded. But I can honestly say I never have with anybody else. I've never found anyone else that I enjoy going on those walks through our brains and minds and the way they all think and explore them in a way that's just conversationally. So the person who is sitting here listening right now, yep, I'm talking to you. What is it that you've taken out of this? Why are you still listening? If you've made it to this point, you've put up with choking fits, you've put up with talking about dogs, kids, you've put up with some of the shit that most people would just turn right off. There's some real finger pointing and looking at yourself if you're still listening at this stage. As you were, Cam. Sorry, that's all I have to say.
I don't have to do an outro now. You've done it for me.
I've turned it all on the person listening. Take a long, hard look at yourself, you useless fuck. Why are you still listening? Cam, much love, buddy. Let's do this again soon. Let's hope that you actually decide, you know what? Let's not interview anyone. Let's just you and I sit there and just explore space. We have enough different areas that we could go down and talk about. And it doesn't need to be the latest upcoming venture or anything like this. Just sitting there and talking. Our conversations are worth recording, I'd say.
100%, man. I can't really top the outro that you've done. You're right. The listeners should take a long, hard look at themselves. But I knew it would be a pleasure chatting, and I've got a lot of love for you, man. Thanks heaps for jumping on. And if you're listening right now and you do want to answer Mark's question, send me a message. Tell me, why did you listen to the end?
All the way to the end. You loser.
Yeah, get a life.
Bless, Cam. Much love back, man. And so cool to catch up.